Greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. It is the day after the 4th of July. It's July 5th here. And I'm going to, I just published a piece. In fact, I wrote it yesterday and sent it into Alternate last night, and they put it up this morning in the wee hours. And you can find it over at alternate.org. And the title of it is find it here, is America past the point of no return? Then the subtitle, oligarchs representing monopolistic big pharma, big banks, and big retail fast food are devastating us. And I would add petro billionaires. And I'm going to get back to that in just a second. But that's the question the principal question that I'm asking you. I mean, of course, it's Anything Goes Summer. You're welcome to call and we'll discuss anything you'd like. It's been 4 days since I was live on the air, so there's probably a fair amount in your pile, in your stack of stuff that you'd like to talk about. There certainly is in mine. But I'm going to get back to the article in a minute. I just want to kind of wrap up this 4th of July thing, which really kind of ties into it. I mean, the 4th of July is the day that we celebrate American independence. And just asking that question, what were the values of this country at its birth, and how badly were they distorted or twisted or misused, or for that matter, to what extent were they purely aspirational and not even realized in many ways until after the Civil War and after the Great Depression? With the enfranchisement of people of color after the Civil War, given that it was put on hold by Jim Crow right up literally to this very day, as Chris Kobach is seeming, wanting to extend the modern day, as Joe Madison would call it, James Crow Esquire Jr., James Crow ESQ. That Kobach wants to expand the voter suppression. But where are we today? What is the fate and future of the United States? Our number 202-808-9925. Frederick Douglass, on this day, in 1852, this, 8 years before the Civil War, wrote this. And this was, at a time when half of America was in, slave states. And so American slavery was legal and widespread. This was 4 years before well, it was actually a whole series of decisions, but the Dred Scott decision in 1856, when Roger Taney, the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, proclaimed that slaves were property, not persons. The mirror image, by the way, of Citizens United, which proclaimed that corporations were persons and not property. But anyway, Frederick Douglass had this to say from the point of view of a formerly enslaved American. He says, "What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is a constant victim. To him your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty an unholy license, your national greatness swelling vanity. Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciation of tyrants is a brass-fronted impudence. Your shouts of liberty and equality are hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of the United States at this very hour. Go where you may, search where you will, roam through all the monarchies and despotisms of the old world, travel through South America, search out every abuse, and when you have found the last, lay your facts by the side of the everyday practices of this nation, and you will say with me that for revolting barbarity and shameless hypocrisy, America reigns without a rival. This, the perspective of American slaves and former American slaves and ancestors of American slaves, is a perspective that is almost always completely missing from anything that has to do with the 4th of July. And I think that's a great tragedy. Meanwhile, NPR over the weekend on the 4th of July, well, yesterday, I mean, it was not the weekend, it was Tuesday, but it's the 4th of July weekend. NPR's Morning Edition celebrated the 4th. They've been doing this for 29 years. They read the Declaration of Independence, on the air. And, they get a bunch of people to read it. Nancy Pelosi's daughter, Christina, I think, Pelosi, as I recall. Maybe Christine. In any case, she produced a video where she was, having everybody from former U.S. presidents, current U.S. president, to just a whole bunch of, a wide variety of people reading little bits and pieces of the Declaration of Independence. But anyhow, as the NPR read it, they also tweeted it. They live tweeted it. And guess what? The Trump supporters on Twitter flipped out. The Trump snowflakes, they melted down. They just, oh my God, you're calling for, you're calling for a revolution? It's just incredible. The responses, a bunch of Trump supporters this morning they went nuts. They thought that the tweets were of the Declaration of Independence. I mean, this, what they used to do back in the 70s and 80s was go out on the street and have people read the Declaration of Independence and then ask them who wrote this. And more often than not, particularly, actually, they were doing it in the 70s, in the late 60s, because I remember this during the Vietnam War, one of the big news agencies did this, and people said, oh, that must be from some communist, right? Or that's got to be from North Vietnam, or, I was just like, come on. Along these same lines of, is America past the point of no return? An interesting piece over in the Daily Mail in the UK. Millennials, the headline reads, aren't ready for the reality of life and suffer from panic attacks and anxiety problems. A study of 2,000 would-be students found they weren't prepared for university life. More than half of millennials don't know how to pay a bill or the real costs of rent. Researchers warned that prospect of leaving home is worrying many millennials. Around half are anxious at this prospect, and 27% are having panic attacks. They're portraying this as, oh, those poor, dumb, unenlightened, immature millennials. But the reality is that millennials are facing economic and political challenges that, frankly, I never faced in my life. I mean, we had a different set of problems that were causing panic attacks back, in the 60s. It was the Vietnam War, especially for, men under 30, I think, whatever the draft cutoff was. The age varied from year to year. But this is arguably, I don't know if it's worse. I don't want to make a comparison worse or better, but this is, the fact that we're just, we've got an entire generation that's been wiped out by student debt. But anyhow, to my article on Alternate, is America past the point of no return? I asked the question, if corporate/billionaire control of our republic, reached such a point that it's no longer reversible, have we passed the tipping point where democracy dies? And then I quote Jimmy Carter. In fact, I embedded the clip of him on this program saying that because of Citizens United, the United States has become, and I'm quoting the president, just an oligarchy with unlimited political bribery. And I say he's right. It's the elephant in the room that everybody, particularly our corporate media, completely ignores. And then, while Republicans are doing the will of their oligarch owners, replacing real scientists with industry lobbyists and shills everywhere in the White House, to congressional science committees, to the EPA, the media stubbornly refuses to report in depth on it, preferring instead to follow the worldwide wrestling moves of our tweeter-in-chief. Redshift election fraud, called Red because it only helps Republicans, has been flagrantly on display across the country since the privatization of our vote by GOP-leaning voter machine companies in the 2000 to 2004 period. GOP voter suppression in nearly 30 states has now been institutionalized with Chris Kobach's interstate crosscheck scam now a presidential commission. Pre-poll and exit poll results flipped in Georgia's 5th district in a way that caused us to decry similar vote rigging in the Ukraine. The results, like in Georgia's 6th, were measurably off from the exit polls. Yet in the face of all this, enough to provoke revolution in countries like Egypt and Ukraine, our press instead focuses on the oligarchs' unproven and well-debunked claim that illegals are voting to help Democrats. While climate change is ravaging the world, the administration of billionaire oligarch Donald Trump has pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Agreement and is rolling back climate protecting rules on behalf of other oligarchs in the oil, coal, and gas industries so that they can continue to use our atmosphere as a sewer. While billionaire-owned Republicans frantically work to roll back the 3.8% tax on investment income for families over $250,000 in investment income every year, they're cutting millions of Americans off of any hope of affordable health care access. Television media usually plays this tax cut story as if it were about health care. From trying to destroy the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which has returned to consumers billions of dollars in ill-gotten gains by from our country's banksters, to gutting environmental laws, to preventing students from even declaring bankruptcy when their efforts to join the middle class by going to college don't work out. The oligarchs who now largely run America are solidifying their power and wealth. This is rule by the rich. It's here, it's now. And then I quote Henry Wallace, the vice president of the United States in 1944 in the New York Times. The super wealthy claim to be super patriots, but they would destroy every liberty guaranteed by the Constitution. They demand free enterprise, but they are the spokesman for monopoly and vested interests. Their final objective, toward which all of their deceit is directed, is to capture political power, so that, using the power of the state and the power of the market simultaneously, they may keep the common man in eternal subjection. So the question, have we finally reached that goal, which in Wallace's day was, the billionaires could only hunger for? And I quote, FDR and talk about Nixon and Eisenhower in the 50s. And anyhow, the article is America past the point of no return? It's an alternate.org right now.